Welcome to Inside the Numbers, last show of 2023. Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Go ahead and like the video, folks. If you like the video, don't forget to share it far and wide. Of course, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. But you don't have to do that on Rumble, which will just notify you anyway. So whether you're on Rumble or anywhere else, mosey on over to the other channels and do the same. All of those metrics really do help quite a bit. But subscribe. And of course, the best place to follow us is on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. Let's do a little review of 2023 Locals. I'm going to ask for your help here, okay? We're going to review some of what, the big things that we had discussed, big predictions that we had made, how we did, be 100% honest, Locals and YouTube members with me. I think on the main things we did pretty well. And then also going into 2024, can we make predictions? I mean, I think we can make some pretty broad predictions, and we can tell you as of right now where things stand. But 2023 showed people anything. It's that a lot can happen in a year in politics. Just also real quick, I have my little one with me. My daughter had a lesson she had to go to. So Laura will be back really soon. So I'm flying kind of on my own here with my two boys, and they're gonna help me out, right? And we're gonna be good, right, little man? Right, little man? He's like, dude, I'm playing with my Play-Doh. I can't really be bothered with you right now. Good. Let's keep it that way. He's over here. He's got everything he needs. But it is a family show today. So I will do my best to watch my filthy mouth since my little one is around here. Laura will be happy with that. Maybe that's what she needs to do from now on to make sure that I keep my my tongue in check. He just looked the little boy around. And my older one, that's a little different. He's already a little too old. Anyway. 2023 showed us that a lot can happen in a year. Going into the new year after the disappointing midterm elections for Republicans, there was a very different narrative that Donald Trump was vulnerable. All his candidates that he picked and backed lost. Of course, none of this was really, the truth is it wasn't true. All right. The establishment candidates lost just as badly as the MAGA candidates. They underperformed just as badly as the MAGA candidates. And Trump endorsed a bunch of people that weren't really MAGA, and then that was used against him in a narrative war. Baldak in New Hampshire is a great example of that. He wasn't a MAGA candidate. General Baldak's been, whatever his rank is, he's not general, has been anti-Trump for years, but he was used, as many, many others were as well. And then, oops, sorry about that. Hey, Sean, you want to say hello to the audience? That's Sean Parnell. Good, solid patriot as always. If you missed his show last night, Battleground at 5, we had a great conversation. Some of that we're going to bring up here, but more. In any event, that narrative quickly turned as Trump took the lead again, and only some people had Donald Trump down at some point in the Republican nomination. We did not. The closest we saw Ron DeSantis get. And you know what? I was going to play a video, and I will. But the closest we had Ron DeSantis get in January, at the start of the year, and it was toward the end of January, we had Trump at 43.4, DeSantis at 30.5. Back then, undecided was higher than anybody else at 11.9, so about 12%. But then it quickly began to widen out again. And Donald Trump's lead began to solidify when because he never lost the non-college primary vote. He did lose at some point some of the college vote, particularly those with advanced degrees. And a four-year degree was always kind of close with us. But he started to widen that lead again with those who were non-college, and then took back college-educated Republican voters. And here we are. Okay, now with Trump in the 60s, which was one of our, love you, see you soon. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were standing there waiting to say goodbye. With one of those major predictions was Trump being incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to be in a Republican primary. The math was the math. It was very simple. Republican primary electorates are going to be dominated, much more so than a general election, by those who do not have a college education in states that very, 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 very much matter. And even when there are more college voters combined, then nobody was ever beating Trump enough with college educated, or the wine class, whatever you want to call it. They were never beating him by a big enough margin that we could be realistic in saying that there's a chance here for somebody else to become the front runner, because you would have to not only get the non-college vote much, much closer than anybody ever did, you would have to be beating him badly with college voters, right? Because if there's a surge, a Trump surge in non-college votes, which we see all the time and have always seen with Donald Trump, then you're gonna the sampling error is going to be hit. All right, that is the Trump factor, the Trump effect, and that's it. And then we also told you that when Trump hit 60 for the first time, and those are pretty good predictions. There's some darker stuff here, though. 2023 was the year of the banana republic. There have always been these right-wing pundits and personalities out there, especially under the Obama presidency, and the United States is it's crumbling before our very eyes. This is banana republic stuff, Lois Lerner, right? You always had these kind of fringe things. But the truth of the matter is, I could always point to a Democratic administration at some point in history that had done something similar. A lot of people don't know it because they don't know their history. But Franklin Delano Roosevelt repeatedly sicked the Treasury Department after his political opponents. So that's not really something that was new, although it got worse, certainly, under Obama. There was like this feeling among the bureaucratic class and the ruling class that it was open season and nobody was going to do anything. Tone from the top matters. Barack Obama is going to give you a little wink and a nod, and you can go nuts and haywire on people. But not at least known to it was how bad it was not to this extent. It was at least not known or prevalent until the year 2023, when we saw for the first time the state try to use its police power. And I'm using definitions, like specific words, because they have specific definitions. The state tried to use its police power to remain in power and prevent a change agent from affecting the will of who is supposed to be the sovereign voter in this country. We are supposed to be the sovereign, not some attorney general, not some special counsel, not some president even. He or she is just the elected representative in the executive branch of the sovereign, the true sovereign, the voter. And here, this time, what we saw, and that's okay, you can leave him, it's all right. What we saw this time, I'll just stay close because I'll call you if I need you. What we saw this time was that bureaucracy, that executive branch, the unelected part, basically backed by the elected representative, although many people don't view that he was legitimate. So therein lies a big problem in and of itself for not just 23, but the entire Biden presidency. Despite what they say, large groups of people do not believe that Joe Biden is a legitimate president. They did that with Trump too, but they made this ridiculous conspiracy theory in order to push that, when one we know now is just not true. All right. So in any event, the people would say that about the election fraud stuff as well. But I think that's a much, much, much more complicated issue than what we know about the Russia collusion hoax. That was just fabricated by his political opposition. All right. So any event, now we're moving beyond the Alvin Bragg Rubicon. I mean, it's amazing. It's December 29th, and this is where we are now, going back and looking back at what happened with Alvin Bragg, and that being, of course, the start of it, but minor compared to what we've seen up until this point. We have a special counsel who's indicted, and his friends have indicted the current leader of a party nomination. And by the way, at least at this point, I don't care what kind of pundit you are, you have got to give Donald Trump at least a slight favorite. You got to give him or acknowledge that he is the slight favorite to win the presidency in 24. And yes, polls are not that predictive this point out, but they show trends. We know we have baselines of support. We know who is supposed to perform at what levels with certain groups. And we know that this isn't a normal dip in approval rating of a president a year out. This isn't the same thing that happened to George W. Bush. It's that Bush did not lose his evangelical support until the recession and the combined effort of the recession, the war. Obama had dipped among certain working class, particularly whites, by the way, that he never lost his black base of support and his non-white base of support. This is something that's totally different. So you have to, at least, even if you're a lefty, you have to give Donald Trump the slight favorite status for 24. And yet we have the state with this prosecutor and his allies have indicted the leading candidate for president more than 90 counts over 4 indictments. And I've said this before, but I'll repeat it because it is the final year show. John Gotti, the black-handed death, neither of these men were ever indicted with as many counts as Donald Trump. That's how ludicrous and banana-like this really is. But you could actually combine all of their indictments together, even when Gotti walked, and you still cannot get to 91. So this is the frantic state of the state. And a frantic state is a dangerous state, a state that knows it's suffering from a lack of credibility in international relations. We call it regime credibility. A state that is in a current regime credibility crisis is very, very dangerous. They imprison people, they persecute people, they prosecute people, on and on. They hurt people. And that's where we are now. And I hate to say it. I wish we could have a much brighter conversation going into 2024, the final year show of 23. But you'd be kidding yourselves. We'd all be kidding ourselves if we did not talk about where we really are right now as a country. It's a dark place. Not an hour after I got done with Sean Parnell last night, the Maine Secretary of State, not the court, not even their state Supreme Court, which, by the way, has no power over federal statutes using the 14th Amendment to ban Donald Trump. But at least the court is a court, right? And by the way, Colorado was a 4-3 decision. I hear a lot of people making this mistake. And it's, despite being Democrat dominated, it squeaked by with 1 vote. That's how ridiculously lunacy. That's the lunacy of that ruling. But in the case of Maine, the Secretary of State is not even an elected official. She was appointed and by elected representatives, but appointed nonetheless. She was a former delegate to Joe Biden. They don't even try to hide this anymore. Like, I went over the resumes of the Colorado Supreme Court justices who voted in favor to remove Donald Trump from the ballot. These are people, one included, that donated a lot of money to Barack Obama, more than 20 grand in 08 alone to Democrats. And then moving on, Hillary for president. This is a woman who supported and funded Donald Trump's political opponent, and yet she voted like this. So they're not even trying to hide it anymore. That's how dangerous these people have become. The pretenses have been dropped. They don't care. The message is, I really don't care politically what you do, because we'll find some way to hurt you. And that's the real state of America right now. And by the way, let me just say this for people, because I'm looking at replies on Twitter, and I actually get really sad when I see things like this. The he's an insurrectionist thing, folks, they don't believe. That's a stupid pill fed to stupid people. They don't believe it themselves. They fabricated a narrative. They know in behind closed doors, They know he's not an insurrectionist. They tell that's for you. That's for you to ingest, and for you, who is apparently many of us in this country have absolutely no problem with authoritarianism. And if you were being honest and looked inward at yourselves, you would admit to yourselves that maybe self-governance is really kind of hard. Maybe it's difficult. Maybe it requires a lot of time, a lot of thought, a lot of energy that you really would rather expel watching like the Outer Banks or playing on Facebook or something, right? Whatever new game Mark Zuckerberg fed into your brain to distract you. So they would rather have people just kind of point and tell them, go here, do this, support that, oppose this, because it's easy. Liberty is hard. Self-governance is hard. Authoritarianism is actually easy in comparison, as long as you obey. And as somebody who's done this research for lawyers all over the country, there's a lot of authoritarians out there. They're okay with deferring to the state for what is morally right, morally wrong, what is good, what is bad, what is virtuous, and what is not. And that's the fight. That is that is not even the fight. That is what will be decided next year. That's the truth. And for a lot of Republicans out there, real quick before we move into this video, because this is a great way to segue into this, I think you need to understand, because this brings up another prediction of 2023. Wasn't even a prediction. A lot of this I didn't predict because I was like pulling it out of my crystal ball. I predicted. I just told you the truth that people didn't want you to know. I told you long before Ron DeSantis ever won that these dirty, disgusting people, these very negative forces in our politics and society, were meeting with him and his surrogates, that he wanted to run for president. They had already whispered in his ear. He caught the bug. He was bit by the president bug. They were going to use him to try to fracture MAGA, and he was going to do it. For those of you who have been around with me the whole year and more, think about this. Think about how in early 23, we told you this. The governor literally ran to favorable media outlets in the state of Florida to fabricate a denial to my accusation. My tweets and clips of me telling you this were all over. I'm not even going to cite them, but they were all over his little newspapers, his friendly little newspapers. Fox News ran cover for him. But he was meeting with McCarthy's donors. He was meeting with Paul Ryan's donors. Ken Griffin absolutely did back him. Robert Bigelow absolutely was backing him. Peter Fye absolutely was backing him. But they didn't back him to support him because they loved him. They used him. They backed him to use him. And now they have all abandoned him. His own pollster is quietly telling people they're in the hospice care phase. Excuse you, piggy. They're in the hospice care phase of the campaign, which is making the patient comfortable. Which months ago, I remember telling Sebastian Gorka, months ago, this campaign is over. It's on life support. I knew it the minute I looked at the financials back in the summer, what they did. They made the Scott Walker mistake. He didn't know it. He didn't understand it. They are arguing, but we have never backed down, and that's going to help us. Okay. No, Jeff Farrell was going to squeeze every $1 million donation out of that fund he could. He was going to bleed it dry, and then he was going to bounce on you. Off to whore yourself to the next scumbag. And that is exactly what happened. And for Governor DeSantis and his team, if you learn anything in the year 2023, learn how to recognize when you are out of your depth, when people who used to like you were trying to offer constructive criticism, which you immediately took as attacks, went nuclear, scorched earth on everybody. Now you burned. By the way, what happens when you scorch the earth? You torch everything. Everything burns, including bridges. And that's where you are at the end of 2023. You have a little over 2 weeks until you are utterly embarrassed. You have 16 days, 12 hours, 38 minutes, and 50 seconds until you are utterly embarrassed in the Iowa caucuses, which will be followed shortly thereafter by your exit from the race and your diminished status as a political figure, which had at one point had a very bright future. So people need to know, and I think this clip is a good clip to run, because another one of these, again, this one's not even a prediction. This was a revelation that the DeSantis campaign and the other, with the exception of one other Republican campaign, was heavily reliant on the presumption that lawfare will be used to take out Donald Trump. Not only did they not oppose it, they were counting on it. And that lawfare now has extended into removing him from the ballot. Now, I'm going to show you in a second, the Maine Secretary of State has already suspended her order, which is just, we don't even have to get into the absurdity of an unelected bureaucrat deciding a federal issue, the guilt and innocence of someone, who you can vote for and who you can't. This is all just maddening and lunacy in and of itself. We don't have to get into it, but they already stayed that or suspended their own order, like basically Colorado. So Trump will appear on the ballot in Maine until the Supreme Court deals with it. So at this point, I don't know anyone who's serious, even on the left, who's a legal scholar, who's serious on the left, who believes the Supreme Court will affirm these decisions. So all I can think to myself is they're trying to rack up the number of them to pressure the Supreme Court and to get bad headlines. But again, really get to the point here. It's important for you to understand that all of these headlines about Democrats did this, Democrats did that, Democrats did this, Democrats did that, they're really not true. Republicans are 100%, well, a certain group of Republicans are 100% behind lawfare against Donald Trump. 100%. They want to remove him from ballots. They want him imprisoned. They want him taken out by police power. And I think everyone needs to go into 24 understanding that, or you're going to be blindsided by a lot of events that are going to come to pass. All right, I'm going to play a clip real quick from our good friend Sebastian Gorka and his interview with Vivek. Vivek, I believe, is 100% right on the accusations he's making, but I do disagree on what his conclusion or, his observation about what are the implications from what he's saying. And then I think I understand what he's trying to do, of course, because he's running for president. So he's trying to spin this in a way that helps him. And I get that, but I'm not sure doing this in this way is going to be healthy for his campaign. Irrelevant, though. The people who were once pushed Ron DeSantis and now are pushing Nikki Haley are absolutely helping to fund this effort to remove Trump from the ballot. Absolutely. Let's rock it. Let's play it. And then we'll come back in a couple of minutes and discuss it. He's 100% correct. Roll with Vivek and Sebastian Gorka.
All right. Well, so when you when you stand up to the podium or get up on the platform, you do cause a stir in the debates. You asked Ronna McDaniel to come up and justify her 7 years of losing 7 elections row after row. And then you say things like, January 6th was clearly a setup. So nobody else is saying what you're saying. Let's unpack that little clip that you posted. You said it's a trap. You mentioned Reid Hoffman and Larry Fink. Tell us what proof you have of that and what the nature of that trap really is.
Look, this is a long story that goes back a long time, but the old expression goes, Sebastian, right? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Right.
Don't be fooled this time. We cannot walk into their trap. Last time, what was it? It was a man-made pandemic and big tech and worse that tilted the scales up and rigged an election in an effort to keep one man out of office. Do you think they're going to let this man get anywhere near that White House again? What do you think that system is going to do? And so I want people to think about this. Fast forward 18 months from now. And let's say that something happens, and I believe that this is exactly what the system is plotting, the permanent state, the super PAC puppet masters, the establishment in both parties, to keep this man away from the White House. Will we say, oh, that was a shock? We didn't see that one coming.
All right, hold on. I just want to pause it real quick because I just want to say, instead of playing it all the way through, a couple of things he's going to say here, I'm going to interrupt and then just quickly give some thoughts because it'll be hard to keep track, in order if I try to take him all at once after the video. But what I'm going to say is this before I play it. I totally agree with what he's saying right now, and he's going to get a little bit more specific about what he's talking about. But again, what he's advocating for in response, I'm not sure is the way. First of all, I'm not sure it's the right way. I personally disagree with it. That's number one. And I'm telling you that as my own, not as a pollster. I'm telling you that as like Rich bet. I personally disagree with his prescription for this because it's capitulation. And, there's just no other way to say it. It's capitulation. You're still allowing them, the puppet masters, right? As he's saying, you're allowing them to dictate the terms of an election. So therefore, you've already lost. And I speak to Trump supporters every day almost, in the job, folks. And they seem to understand this when other people don't, that it doesn't matter what the reality of the situation is. The real reality is if you allow them to dictate the terms, you've already lost. You've already lost. You're not going to outsmart them by finding another way around their diabolical plan. Their only way out is through. It has to be total victory or they're going to come back. That's what we've seen with collusion, with everything. If you don't stop them on their own ground, they will break through the line. I don't know how else to say this. All right. But he's right about what he is saying. They're not. I just think that it's going to go to a darker place than what he's talking about.
Or are we going to say, what the hell were we doing? And we need to wake up to reality. And how were we duped yet again? I think they're selling us the rope today that they will use to hang us tomorrow. And so that's my increasingly firm conviction, Sebastian, is that these people will stop at nothing to keep them away. And I'm doing everything I can to stop that. Colorado, you saw that disastrous ruling from their state Supreme Court. Within minutes of my hearing about it, I didn't have to think twice. I said that I would remove my own name from the Colorado GOP ballot if Trump's name was removed as well. And you know what? Here's the sad part of this. If every other Republican did the same thing, then that's exactly how we prevent this act of election interference in our own primary. The other ones don't. Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley said they want to collect their delegates.
Okay, stop. There we go. So Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley said they want to collect their delegates. Right. He just gave what I think is the right prescription. And because it's not happening, you can only conclude that the rest are in on it. And they are. So just stop. All right. I'm not going to entertain everyone's shills and influencers and talking heads and mouthpieces. They're in on it. If they truly believed a conviction, folks, a real conviction that this was wrong, then they would do what Vivek is doing. They're not. So I understand what Vivek is saying, but he just gave the right prescription. And then he says, but, we need to do something else. And I know what he would say if we had him here today. And Vivek, if you're listening, if I misinterpret what you're saying, feel welcome to come on and correct the record. But I think he would say, but they're not doing it. So then we have to adjust our plan, our tactics, right? But again, then you have to explain to me how that is not capitulation. All right. So he's running for president. And of course, he wants a way out that benefits him. He wants a solution to this that benefits him. He doesn't want the solution to be the only way out is forward, is through. Which, what does that look like? It looks like the voters absolutely flip out. And these people cave like the Michigan and like the Maine Secretary of State just caved overnight and suspended her order. They're going to keep doing this. All right. Just for those headlines, they're going to keep doing this. They're going to try to even dupe some people into thinking they can or not allowed to vote for Donald Trump. No doubt that's what they're doing. But the pressure keeps up and you just nominate him anyway. And then he defeats Joe Biden. That's the only way through, whether you're Republican, a Democrat, whatever. If you're looking at the problem objectively, not through a partisan lens. All right. That's the only way through. He of course doesn't want that because that doesn't help him, but I'll let him finish.
And so then it kind of opens your eyes a little bit and see what's actually going on. Well, you look at where that money's going. Who is the establishment actually propping up? It's not Joe Biden, actually. And it's interesting because,
No, it's not.
I was saying for a long time, I thought that they were going to move Joe Biden to one side. Why are you hearing about the documents case only now, from years ago when he was a senator, for God's sake? Why are you only hearing about the Hunter Biden issues from 7-8 years ago now? I thought they were, this looked like the establishment's really propping up by it, and it's almost like they're getting ready to throw him under the bus, too. And so I assumed that it was going to be Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama, but I want, I'll be saying more about this, as this unfolds, but I want people to open their eyes and see it for themselves. Follow the actual money. Follow the actual breadcrumbs they've dropped. In retrospect, this will be obvious. But look right now at who that establishment's propping up. The Democratic brand's a little tarnished, Sebastian. And for those who think this about Republicans versus Democrats, you might be missing the plot.
All right, so
Right,
I don't
well,
know
so
why I don't
what
know why he just doesn't come out and frankly say it, because of course he's talking about Nikki Haley. All right, I mean Nikki Haley. There is no difference between Nikki Haley and Joe Biden on many of these issues. There just isn't. I mean, from a point of view of the two main influencing forces on American politics, which would be Wall Street and the money class, right? And then the foreign policy, military industrial complex class. Between those two, they're fine with Nikki Haley. There's no difference. Oh, hey, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, it's delicious. Go make me a sundae. Okay? Yeah. Oh, thank you, buddy. Go make daddy a sundae. I'd love it. He's so cute. I hope you don't mind that. I mean, he's just coming in and out, making Play-Doh like ice cream things for me. But something, so speaking of which, and he was just texting back and forth. Something my buddy Sean just said the other day is 100% correct. I mean, there is no major difference, and I'm going to play it actually right now. All right, listen to what Sean says. You tell me why those who are now casting Joe Biden aside, and if you're Joe Biden, you're not going to leave because you're trying to protect your son and you're trying to protect yourself. Newsom can't win. He can't win. We've polled this before. By the way, that was another prediction in 23. There will be talk about that, but we polled it early and we polled it many times. He doesn't play in the Sun Belt. He doesn't play in the Rust Belt. Maybe one day in the future, he'll emerge as somebody who can be a standard bearer for the Democratic Party, but Trump would absolutely demolish Gavin Newsom, and now other pollsters are showing that. So where does that really leave these people? Where does it? Well, if you can't push Joe Biden out, and Kamala Harris, you can't leapfrog the first female vice president of color in the history of the country. Democrats would fracture their base even more than we see it now. So there it is. What are you going to do? Where does that leave you? And Vivek is right to follow the money. They all give to the same people anyway. Listen to what Sean said.
Nikki Haley and Joe Biden are not that much different. They're quintessentially the same on Ukraine. They're the same on China. They're the same on almost all national security. They're the same as our relationship to NATO and the United Nations. They're the same on almost all of the defense contracting, forever wars, regime change. They're the same, which is why I think you see the establishment. One, they'd be fine with Joe Biden because the status quo remains the same. But two, you have someone like Nikki Haley, who is essentially Joe Biden-like. They might differ on some cultural issues here and there, pro-life versus pro-choice, right? But to the people who are making all the Benjamins, they don't really care.
Boom. And there you have it. There was a tweet by Nikki Haley the other day that should have given everybody a little heads up. She goes on and on about the 30 plus trillion in debt, and then goes on to cite all of these stupid little projects, treadmills in Russia, right? The shrimp thing. I don't know. Ridiculous stuff. Nothing to do with what actually drives the debt. And the reason is because she can't. She can't. Her benefactors are the same benefactors that have backed both Democrats and Republicans in the past, because there are, again, two main drivers in this country of influence, and that's the war machine and Wall Street. Wall Street and the war machine. And they back Nikki Haley right now, including people, and there's Vivek, Vivek's comment about her donor surge at the first debate. It got her DeSantis donors that bail, but it also got her some people who switch back and forth. It got her the BlackRock crowd. BlackRock is incredibly invested right now in Ukraine and the continuance of the war in Eastern Europe. This is a woman who just recently told a crowd that Iran and Hamas intentionally chose Putin's birthday to launch the attack against Israel. This is insane. And they love it. They would love it. So if you can't beat them, blend with them. The establishment has long figured this tactic out. Just make it so whomever the voters have to choose from, it's a win-win for you. I hate to say it, but I think it was the first episode of What Are the Odds in the year 2023 when Robert Barnes and I told viewers that they would use Ron DeSantis to fracture MAGA, do everything in their power to stop Donald Trump, and while everybody was laughing at the prospect of Nikki Haley, they would try to sneak her in there. She can raise money. What she doesn't have is tremendous support, but that doesn't matter if you remove somebody from a ballot. That doesn't matter if you try, with some form of lawfare to take somebody out. And then she'll make the case that you'll have no choice but to vote for me, because if you don't, Donald Trump's going to spend the rest of his life in prison, and they will try to blackmail the voter. That's what they've been doing for months. Okay, let me read you what the Secretary of State from Maine wrote. And a lot of people are, giving me this impression they must know something, because they wouldn't be doing this stuff and then staying their orders if they didn't know something. All right, so here it is. All right, so here's what she wrote. Given the compressed time frame, the novel constitutional questions involved, the importance of this case, and impending ballot preparation deadlines, I will suspend the effect of my decision until the Superior Court rules on any appeal or the time to appeal under 21A Section 337 has expired, noting administrative agencies are free to fashion their own rules of procedure. And what she means is how they would implement whichever, if that happened. The challenger or candidate may appeal this decision by commencing action in the Superior Court within 5 days of this date. Of course, he's going to do that. However, they're trying to set this up so that it slow walks. The deadline for the ballot is, Maine is decided on Super Tuesday, March 5th, Super Tuesday. And for those of you who have been looking and following our nomination, and I'll pull it up, I'll show you. Donald Trump is some 40 points behind, 40 points ahead in the state of Maine. And in that state, just to give you the rules real quick, it's a closed primary. Only registered party members may participate in it. All 20 delegates are bound to the result of it. If a candidate earns more than 50% of the statewide vote, all 20 delegates are awarded on a winner-take-all basis. If not, delegates will be awarded or allocated on a proportional basis, starting with the candidate who received the most votes. The percentage of the votes is multiplied by the total number of delegates and rounded up to the next whole number. Repeat the process for each remaining candidate in descending order until all delegates are allocated, except none of that will matter because, of course, Donald Trump is going to win the state with a majority. That's it. And I think at this point, he's probably going to win it even more. And for all these people who are like, well, there's some crazy conspiracy here, and what's really going on is that they want you to think Donald Trump is, the strongest candidate, and really because he's the weakest candidate, and blah, 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 blah. No, it's nonsense. The state does not go to the lengths they are going to now to stop a candidate unless they are afraid of said candidate. Somebody from Locals, Jim, hat tip to you, put this up on Locals. This is why they're removing Donald Trump from the ballot in Maine. That's why. It's really rather simple. When was the last time a Republican congressional candidate carried Maine's 2nd congressional district? When was the last time a Republican presidential candidate got within single digits of winning the state of Maine? Right. Mitt Romney, a silk-stocking, establishmentarian Republican, got annihilated in the state of Maine. George W. Bush, even in his reelection effort, just couldn't do it. Even with family ties. Susan Collins has a long history, and there's a different element to her appeal. That's why she's winning. And by the way, she would be in increasing danger of losing her seat if the MAGA or America First coalition did not emerge. Because, of course, those who came out and voted for her, those who came out that were MAGA in 22, of course, voted for Susan Collins. So she had still her base that's outside of Bangor and the rest where she performs better in and around both Bangor and Portland than other Republicans. And the 2nd Congressional District still voted in droves for her. As Barnes and I have said, that is like the Stephen King novel area of Maine. Haven, think about Haven. What's another one? Pet Cemetery, other areas of Maine like that. Salt of the earth people, even though Stephen King puts them in horror movies because he is an elitist who thinks we should look down on people like that. These are salt of the earth people who had been voting Democrat because they're largely working class, largely not silk stocking, have nothing in common with the Republican Wall Street class. At that time, that's what they viewed the Republican Party to be. They don't like war at all. And Maine would, of course, be in serious danger of falling right now. Not just the 2nd Congressional District, the entire state, if the election was held today. The swing nationally that we are seeing, it is with working class particularly. It's actually more prevalent with non-white working class, but just the white working class improvement we've seen for Donald Trump's support since 2020 is sufficient enough to put Maine in very, very close proximity to tipping. That goes without, not considering whether or not college grads would vote more for Biden or not. So, as you can see, Donald Trump comes along, cuts the Democratic share of the vote in half, or I would say cuts their margin of victory. Excuse me. That's a more accurate way to put it. Cuts the margin of victory statewide in half and takes the 2nd Congressional District away. Great map, Jim. And by the way, I've seen those maps before. I'm wondering what you guys are using. We use Data Wrapper. And we use other stuff as well. There's some other good ones out there, but that one's a pretty cool one. I'm curious which one you use, because what I like about that is that that's the way our maps for Decision Desk look. A lot of others like Politico and the New York Times, although maybe the New York Times is moving over considering what I've heard they're doing. But notice that it's not done by county the same way in Maine. He did it by municipality there, which is the right way to do it. If you go back and look at the 2020 map on People's Pundit Daily, you'll see that Maine will have these areas that are not, it's the way Maine reports their votes. It's the by area that Maine reports their votes. So you'll see large areas of counties that actually do not have vote shares allocated to them. And I like that. I like that. That's the way that map reported it. Just to show you guys what I'm talking about here. We got time. It's 12:44. All right. So it isn't by. Here we go. Load up, load up. Something is getting crazy. It may even be my own thing. But that's how it's reported at the presidential level, as you can see. All right. And again, look, that's 53 to 44. It's close. It's really, and he did better against Hillary Clinton, by the way. So, statewide, but it's close enough to really put it in serious danger of falling. It's a nail biter. And then you put Kennedy on the ballot along with Jill Stein, who, by the way, will be on the ballot in Arizona. We never got a chance to talk about that. That's a big deal. The fact that the Green Party will finally be on the ballot in Arizona is a major, major deal. It is incredibly difficult to get on the ballot for independents and third-party candidates. To get on the ballot in Arizona, if you remember in 2020, God, this thing's shuffling by quick. You can see Joe Jorgensen was on the ballot. In Georgia, Joe Jorgensen was on the ballot, but the Green Party was not. And independent candidates were not, as they more easily can be in some Rust Belt states. Minnesota is a great example. Everybody and their mother was on that ballot. even in Wisconsin, but no Green Party. Democrats were successful in getting Howie Hawkins off the ballot in Wisconsin. He was on in Michigan. There you can see. So it's a big deal. There will no doubt be disaffected Democrats mulling whether they will vote for Jill Stein over Joe Biden. Now that he is essentially in the same territory, he's worse than Donald Trump in the Real Clear Politics average. Biden's favorability is worse now than Donald Trump's for the first time ever, and approaching Hillary Clinton levels. It's true. It's not even a joke, Bob. That's, I mean, it's funny, but it's, not honestly not a joke. And I had put this up and I forgot to. Let me play this as a flashback to those who don't think that all of this is, of course, being coordinated from the top. All right, just bear with me, because I was talking about before we move out at 23, the first hour, I want to spend more time about 23. And then the second hour kind of takes some, I know everyone's fretting. It's Friday anyway. It's a Q&A day. So I wanted to take some questions, most likely that deal with the future, right? And then talk about what I think we can, at least at this point, assume will happen in 24. Or at least make a reasonable prediction about what might happen in 24. Because, again, look at the events of 23 overall, and what it should tell you is don't get too cocky or arrogant in trying to predict the specific events too far into the future. And far in the future in politics is, 6 months is far into the future. But there are some things we can look at where we can at least say it's obvious that so-and-so will try to do this, that this class will try to do that, and vice versa. All right. But let me play this real quick. It's 15 seconds. 15 seconds.
We just have to demonstrate that he will not take power by, if he does run, making sure he, under legitimate efforts of our Constitution, does not become the next president again.
And he says, I mean, you could say legitimate efforts all you want, but actions speak louder than words. And I think that actually the first round of words that he uttered out of his mouth were much, much more representative of what they intended to do. And people like Mike Davis have been out there. The media hates him, man. MSNBC is getting obsessed with Mike Davis, right? And they are. I mean, they're running whole segments about him. I mean, it's really pathetic. But I think that's telling. It's because he's over the target. He's been a part of that world. He knows the players involved for years. So he's been able to connect the dots. So-and-so left the Justice Department and went to Alvin Bragg's office. Fannie Willis has so-and-so doing this for her, by the way, that must have been sent directly from the White House. This is being done with the blessing of this person and that person. Again, the main Secretary of State, for crying out loud, is a Biden elector. You can't make this stuff up. You cannot make this stuff up. One of the state Supreme Court justices is married to basically management in the Denver office at the U.S. Attorney's Office. He works for the Justice Department. You think they don't talk about these cases with Pillow Talk at home? Come on. Give me a break. Let's see those text messages like we see Peter, like we got to get to look at one point Peter Strzok and Lisa Page's text messages. I guarantee you they're in there talking about this. Guaranteed. And again, I think because it's 12:50 and want to move on, thank a few people before we get on and have a separate word about stuff before we move on to 24. But you will be stunned in the year 2024 if you don't come to the realization right now that this is really just not about Republican and Democrat. This is not Democrats doing this, Joe Biden's people doing this. Fannie Willis indicted Trump with the blessing of Brian Kemp. Get over yourself if you don't believe that. He can say what he wants when he sits down with 60 Minutes or whoever he was talking to. When he said, "Oh, he's better than Joe Biden, so I guess I would have to vote for him." They're full of crap. I guarantee you, if we found Brad Raffensperger's ballot And Brian Kemp's ballot from 2020, it will not have Donald Trump marked in next to it. Yeah, the bubble next to the name would not be darkened with near Donald Trump. It would. I'm telling you, folks. I know these people. They most definitely either voted for Joe Biden or they, wrote someone in or something stupid or left it blank or something stupid. They talk very differently behind closed doors than they do when they're in front of the camera, and that's just the truth. All right. Real quick, I wish Laura should be back soon. And I said, as soon as you get in, can you go back and take a bunch of things? Locals, I'm counting on you here, though. Locals, I'm counting on you. Can you by any means give me one that I really blew in 2023? I'm not sure. Yeah. Just somebody in locals put up. I should have showed you the district by district level. Decision Desk will do each district. If you're looking at statewide results, you're going to basically see it by municipality, but they do show you congressional district as well. And for anyone who cares, Trump won the 2nd congressional district 52.4 to 44.7. And basically every pollster, except for the Bangor Daily News, I think it's called, it's DMR or DMDRI. I forgot. I'm sorry. I'm blowing the name of the pollster here, but they have long polled for the Bangor local paper, and they got it right in 16. They got it right in 20. Everyone else, including Emerson, blew the 2nd congressional district badly. If you go back and look at the polls, you'll have anywhere from a Biden +1 upwards to Biden +8. It's ridiculous. It's a difficult area to poll. It's a scarcely populated congressional district. It's tough. It really is. It's hard to get people that are likely to be Trump voters. Speaking of which, before we get into what I wanted to say, I just wanted to make a note about there's this back and forth on Twitter right now. It's Sean Davis and these neocons, Mark Thiessen and others. Because Sean Davis made a end of the year 2023 statement about the state of Ukraine and how this was always going to end with a peace talk, and good job, you basically murdered tons of Ukrainians for no reason. And by the way, how many civilians, how many dead Russians? I mean, we should care about the lives of all, no matter whether they're Russian, Ukrainian, or whatever. I'll tell you, folks, I don't support the Palestinian cause, but I mourn for the death of Palestinians. I mean, it's still human death is human death. Anyway, all they did was regurgitate talking points about Putin aggression, blah, blah, blah. Like everyone else in D.C. who's been wrong about every foreign policy decision. Oh, thank you, buddy. What do you want me to do? Open it for you? Oh, go on and on about how, the Russians have been the aggressors, ignoring wholly that EU and there you go, buddy. Ignoring wholly that the EU and NATO are in their sphere, not the other way around. They didn't actually answer anything Sean had to say. And in one of Mark Thiessen's responses, he brings up Gallup and how according to Gallup, 60% of Ukrainians wanted to do this until the end. Yeah, okay. Let me tell you all a little secret about polling Ukraine. When the war kicked off, even before it became a total war zone, panel providers and telecoms cut ties to large areas of Ukraine, mostly those that speak Russian. Ethnic Russian areas in eastern Ukraine, you could not reach. Couldn't reach them by panel, couldn't reach them by phone. So I don't know how on earth you could take a poll of Ukraine seriously at all. There's just no way to poll large areas of the country. It will skew badly now toward the West and would have from the very beginning of this. Because the people you'll be able to reach are largely in and around Kiev and other areas of Western Ukraine, even central. There's some parts of central. We looked at it. We saw it. And anyone who's a pollster knows what I'm talking about. If you went in to your, whatever it is, software vendor, provider, that Texas, that whatever it may be, that maybe it's a content management system for your agents to use during interviews, or baby, go ask brother. He'll do it. He's there for you. Okay. Or if you went into your panel provider for online responses, you would have saw a big banner. What do you want to do? Close. You got to close it, buddy. There you go. You would have saw a big banner that said, we we are cutting off access to this part of Ukraine and Russia in protest because they were doing it to be they were virtue signaling. So we're cut, or at least that's what they were saying. They always couch their real interest in terms of virtue signaling, these people. It's the same thing with Wall Street and the rest of them, like I brought up the other day on social media. They don't really give a damn about poor people. JP Morgan cashes in every time they swipe the snap. It makes them look like they're virtuous, right? But their interests are being served. I guarantee it's the same thing here. It looks like a virtue signal, but at the same time, you're no longer allowed to poll large parts of Ukraine where perhaps you may find favorable opinions of Putin and unfavorable opinions of Vladimir Zelensky. The only thing we can say for sure is that before the war, Vladimir Zelensky, when you could still poll Ukraine correctly, Vladimir Zelensky's approval rating was like 28%, 30% in his best polls. That's the only thing we can say for sure. And now that the country is war-torn, anyone releasing polls of Ukraine, you better look at with a very, very skeptical eye because, of course, there's just no way to poll that country at this point. Can you imagine pretending you can poll a war-torn country? It's just insane. It's insane. All right. Yeah, it looks like there was another attempt on Derek Chauvin's life. I'm going to leave that off for now. All right. So 12:57. Before we get into 24, just take the time to say this. We don't have to do reads today or anything, but it is great. You guys should support them. You know that we have these sponsors that are helping build up the show. I mean, ultimately, they're the ones who are, funding, and you guys that support us are funding a better show. And we have these really big plans for 24. We're going to use some of the primaries, and obviously caucuses be a little different, but some of the primaries to kind of like experiment with what we plan to do in 24. We're not going to just go gung-ho into it so we don't mess up an election night or something, especially like a Super Tuesday or something. But we do have big plans for how we're going to deliver election coverage. And we even, some hope, we have this delegate tracker. We're dying to show you that's basically done and developed and looks great. With the help, with the help, we will still partner with Decision Desk, but we have our own API stuff that we're working on that we think is going to be just great. The goal is to make people think, why would I ever watch Fox News for election coverage? We want a place that not only delivers the similar infographics or whatever you want to call it, but superior ones, and then does so without the BS in between. Like, who the hell cares about Karl Rove's opinion, right? Do we need to see Karl Rove march off to the Decision Desk and protest again? Like, do we need that? Do we need someone's ridiculous opinion about why the voters were wrong to vote like this in this part of that state or that part? Like, who cares about that? There has to be a place where people can just go and get real solid information without the nonsense in between. And when we get to ultimately the main event here, I do want people to we're going to invite people to join us so I could do my job better than just sitting there and commentating, so I can just deal more with the math and we can get the state of the races, because the data comes in fast and furious, and I can't be sitting there talking to the camera and then also doing my job. So I will try to keep that banter back and forth like we don't want to hear on Fox News. We don't want to hear on CNN. We try to keep that obviously to a minimum, if not nil, and still deliver, again, not just equal what they do, but superior to what we do. I frankly already think that our graphics, when we release polls, are by far superior to what anyone else is doing. There's no contest, and that's because of you guys. So, and those who have sponsored us. So, there are links in the description, but some people come in, they sponsor when they can, they go. Just wanted to thank all those people. Obviously, you guys who view and watch and subscribe and support and give stickers and chats, super chats, and whatever else it is, whether it's Rumble or where else, or YouTube. Obviously, you guys as well. But some of the companies that came in, I love. You guys know that I love 4 Patriots. They're a fantastic company. We hope they that we continue that in the future. And Field of Greens also, we're big into those kinds of, obviously, their products. They're great products. The wellness company that came on board recently, a fantastic company. We got to thank them as well. And of course, who's been with us throughout the entire time, which was a different kind of experiment, Jam and Bean. We get nothing but great reviews from people, our viewers who have signed up with Jam and Bean to get their stuff. Everybody, if I'm missing somebody, I'm deeply sorry, but that's what makes the show grow, and we thank everybody for it. All right, so I wanted to do that. Let's see. And if you want to take advantage of those offers, the current ones, the links are in the subscription. Yo, this is funny. Let's just be funny real quick, okay? We'll get serious in a minute. Peter Field supports DeSantis. Say it 5 times fast. Are you ready? And I think you meant Peter Fye, right? You meant Peter Fye. Peter Fye supports DeSantis. Say it 5 times. Peter Fye supports DeSantis. Peter Fye supports DeSantis. Peter Fye supports DeSantis. Peter Fye supports DeSantis. I was almost there. Peter Fye supports DeSantis. Peter Fye supports DeSantis. Peter Fye supports DeSantis. Jeez Louise, man. Guys, try it at home. It's actually kind of fun. Good job, Ryan. That's awesome. And violence and poetry, stay tuned, because I am writing our own intro song. All right. It's just going to be a guitar riff with me ripping on it. Stay tuned. And I think you guys will see it and know it when you get it. Here's Crew Kid. Ukraine is the biggest tragedy of the last 2 years. Generations lost because Obama and Nuland are terrified Putin discovers what they were doing in those bioweapon labs, and because money needs laundering. I wish I could push back on that and say, no, that didn't happen. I mean, on the Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense websites, there have been references to partnerships with Ukraine in biochemical industries and laboratories. There's just no doubt about it. They're doing naughty things. And listen, guys, you don't take your business to Ukraine unless you want to be dirty. Ukraine is, if not the most, one of the most corrupt so-called developed nations on earth. You don't go there because you're an honest businessman who wants to do business. You just don't. If you did, you'd go to Russia. That's the truth. And which is also, of course, corrupt. But if you wanted to be more on the up and up, you'd go to Russia. You'd go to Moscow. Sorry, but it's true. You want to do something dirty with biochemical weapons, you go to Ukraine. And the laundering of the money is just disgusting. And by the way, that was part of, I don't know if you saw it, Crew Kid, but that's part of why Mark Thiessen was flipping out. His column over, here's the dirty little secret. Most of the money still ends up in the U.S. No kidding, you stupid idiot. That's what money laundering is. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. It's like these kids that grew up, like they wore diapers until they were 6 and sucked on their mommies, until they were like 4. All right. No, it's true. They couldn't, they got picked last for kickball, right? But they could really they had no friends. It's like these people are now like part of the ruling class in one of the two parties. And it's just, they've been wrong about everything for decades. And yet they're still, it's unbelievable. Julie Kelly put up before, she was like, it amazes me how any of these so-called conservative influencers ever had any influence. Well, it's because of their pedigree. That's why, because we became less of a meritocracy and more of an artificial aristocracy. Come on, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong about it. Look at that guy. Pegged him. John, what's your... this is just a well wish. Thank you, John. We really appreciate it. God bless you and your family. Keep the faith. F the rhinos and the stupid pills of the elites. I'm telling you, John, if people don't see this, beautiful family, by the way, and God bless you and yours as well. If people don't see the stupid pills that are intended, to sedate the stupid masses, then I don't really know. I don't know what to tell them. I just, at this point, I really don't know what to tell them. And it's like, we really don't have a lot of time for them to like detox from the stupid pills. We just don't have that time. And that's tragedy. But yeah, these kids grew up eating paint chips. John, you know what I'm talking about. That guy, Mark, is the guy who got the Lego stuck up his nose and had to go to the emergency room because his mother couldn't get the Lego out with the tweezers, and they had to go to the emergency room to get the tweezers that were this long to stuff up his nostril because he couldn't stop picking and sticking stuff up there. Come on, man. And these are the guys we're supposed to take serious now. I mean, God, give me a break. Yeah, our son was telling me I was being too hard on him. Yeah, David Brooks is another one. Tell me that kid wasn't king of the skid marks until he was like 10. All right? That is who he is. Now they wear Depends and order their lattes with soy milk. Whew. All right. Gary Johnson did hurt Trump in Maine. Yes. Yes. Come on, locals. I'm looking for something here. You haven't given me a negative. We had to have gotten something badly wrong in 23. Everybody's wrong once in a while. On the big things, however, I just don't know how we could have done any better, especially considering the reaction to some of the big things that we had said, you know, and had projected or had frankly told you, you know. So yeah, I just don't know. And yep. I'm just trying to read these. Laura just got back, so hopefully she'll help me out. Yeah, hopefully she'll help me out. But yeah. I'm also looking on local specifically for things I got wrong in 23.
Oh, so they're digging in.
I'm trying to help. Yeah, I'm trying to get something. Let's have a little modesty here. I must have gotten something wrong because I did get to take an hour of victory laps. There has to be something. And I almost played the Harris video. You remember? It was the.
I mean, the belligerent.
It was
not one coherent sentence.
No. I mean the Harris poll video. I remember we had Daniel Street on. I was taking a lot of heat because of our poll that showed Trump hit 60 for the first time and DeSantis began to fall into the teens. Mm-hmm. And then without fail, boom, the Harris Harvard poll comes out and basically was totally like they copied and pasted, which I know they didn't. They just saw what we saw, you know? And yeah. So there's got to be something. You know, again with this Nikki Haley stuff, what do we say about this Nikki Haley stuff? Nikki, I said this last night on Sean, and I'll comment on this here. Once in a while, we get to pull back the veil, or the veil gets pulled back, and we get to see that the people that are being presented to us are not what they seem. They're carefully constructed characters in a story, in a plot, and they're not what they appear to include, being not as smart as they appear. All right. And Nikki Haley, the reason she squirmed over, and I'm not going to play the video, I have it, but we've all seen it. The reason why she squirmed so badly on the question of what do you think the cause of the Civil War was? What do you think caused the Civil War? And they're of course immediately, that was a Democrat plan. I actually don't think it was a Democrat plan. MAGA has a lot more reason to plant a question like that. But there's two reasons she squirmed so bad. One is, yes, she is historically ignorant. She clearly has no idea what she's talking about. There's a politically correct response to that. It's a layup. It has to do with slavery, of course. And then there's a more sophisticated and accurate response, which of course also includes slavery, but it's much more than that, even economic in nature, and certainly a question of federalism overall, right? Because if you're Lincoln, for instance, the truth is Lincoln wasn't some champion of slavery. He wasn't. I hate to break everyone's bubble. All right. It was politically advantageous for him to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. It was politically advantageous for him to advocate for that amendment. And of course, it was politically advantageous to use the rhetoric of natural law and higher law in order to convince people that their cause was just. But Lincoln was consumed by questions of federalism and the unity of the Union. If someone can just succeed, then we have to preserve that Union by all costs. Otherwise, our Constitution, our social contract doesn't mean anything. He questioned what, I'm sorry, but it's true. He questioned what slaves would do with their freedom, whether they were ready, and he toiled over this. Of course, he didn't like slavery, and his parents were his father, and specifically, was a serious abolitionist. But that just goes to show you, it serves as more proof that slavery was not, he wasn't, it wasn't his, I don't say hill to die on, it's a badly poured phrase, but it wasn't his primary driver in the beginning, especially because if it was, you would have seen the zeal, the abolitionist zeal exuding from him from the jump in his career and even his presidency, and it didn't. All right. So he was raised in a household like that, and yet he was mild-mannered on the topic. Even when he was running for Congress, he said some contradictory things. I mean, so getting back to what she said, she doesn't know any of that. To her, she's, just a fool who thinks that Lincoln was a champion of abolitionists everywhere, which is just false. And, and blah, blah. That's all she knows about Lincoln. He freed the slaves and he's the real Republican Party and blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, bringing up the big con, dry answer of this was about, the power, the nature of government. And, this was about individual liberty. And what the hell are you talking about? She didn't know. That's part of it. But the second part, and the reason why she struggled even further to try to explain beyond her dumbass explanation, is because that will lead into a conversation on an issues that she knows she's vulnerable with. All right. No Republican candidate is going to be nominated if they are a culture war caver or a culture war coward. And that is what Nikki Haley is. Julian Zelizer, CNN, and I know it's CNN, but made some really, really good points in this op-ed he had written. All right. And it says, at this time, she made a big mistake because this time, first of all, she's wrong and she's going to hurt herself with moderates and she's going to hurt herself with even Democrats who may have voted for her. So she would really hurt herself in a general election against Joe Biden with this comment. And I agree with Julian. I think that the fake numbers that she has now, and actually they're already evaporating and have been since I started calling them fake, but the fake numbers that she has were built on people who were just dissatisfied with Joe Biden, but otherwise inclined to support him. That's why his support level is low when you pegged him up against a then unknown Nikki Haley, at least in some polls, depending on mode. Those live caller polls are definitely going to show this. So the Fox News, the Wall Street Journal poll, even the New York Times poll, that definitely would show fake inflated support for somebody like a Nikki Haley at that time. But at this point, she could expect to see all of that now, not deflate, but popped like a balloon after a comment like this, because the voters that were behind those fake numbers now are going to know something about her, and it's not going to be something they're going to agree with, and they're going to dislike how she handled this and what she said. And they would be simply more inclined now to say, even though I'm dissatisfied with Joe Biden, I would rather support him over someone like Nikki Haley, who can't even say slavery was the cause of the Civil War. She will have offended that group of people. And I totally agree with him. He's one of those people, by the way. He's that kind of person. So I totally get that. All right. But he misses the bigger picture in the primary, and all these people on CNBC, MSNBC and Morning Joe and CNN and others, they're all like, oh, this isn't going to hurt her because, Republican primary voters don't care about that stuff. You're an idiot. Of course they do. That's number one. Number two, they're going to think about something else, which is, and this is what she tried to avoid. It's not that they're sticking up for the Confederacy. They're sticking up for history. They're sticking up for anti-totalitarianism that destroys all references to the past so they can build their future on a new slate. Republicans are deeply unconscious. By the way, most Americans, a super majority of Americans, dislike the idea of destroying and removing monuments because you don't like what they represent, because of the Confederacy. The vast majority of Americans do not support. They oppose tearing down Confederate symbols, monuments, statues, etc. She is a caver on the flag and monument issue. She caved before this was even an issue. Same thing, by the way, with transgenderism. She caved on that before it was ever an issue. This is where Nikki Haley is really vulnerable. Even educated Republicans don't like cowards. Culture war cowards. What that just told the older traditional Republican is that Nikki Haley will do whatever Nikki Haley needs to do. Nikki Haley will say whatever Nikki Haley needs to say. And by the way, she's not as smart as people may have thought she was. They're banking it all on New Hampshire for her. DeSantis, his death spiral right now is a godsend to her. But this is where we're at. That is the real reason why, after 24 hours, they still could not give a correct, accurate response. And by the way, let's actually go over that, okay? Let's go over it. It's important. While Laura's getting situated anyway, I'm not going to take a break, not a real one. I'm going to take a second to drink a sip of coffee or water or something, but that's it. We're not going to do any reads here. Speaking of which, let me drink some coffee. Hey, boo-boo, where you at? I don't know. All right. Last night, I was asked about the Civil War. And what I think of the Civil War and what was the cause of the Civil War. Of course, the Civil War was about slavery. We know that. That's unquestioned. Always the case. Okay, really? We know the Civil War was about slavery. And I'm not repeating myself. She's repeating herself. But it was also more than that. It was about the freedoms of every individual. It was about the role of government. For 80 years, America had the decision and the moral question of whether slavery was a good thing and whether government, economically, culturally, or any other reasons, had a role to play in that. What the hell is she talking about? Folks, after we abandoned the Articles of Confederation and moved into the Constitution, agreed to adopt the Bill of Rights along with it because anti-federalists weren't on board, there was already the question of slavery decided in the future. What is she talking about? Few people understand that it was already set up to be outlawed in the next generation. By the way, I have a locals member who brings up the impact a lot of the cotton gin on this and why the invention of the cotton gin at that time kind of like muddied this. Otherwise, if not, we probably would all know right now that in truth, and during the early republic and the formation of this government, slavery was already set to be outlawed. Mm-hmm. But because of the cotton gin, it made it more efficient and it made the economic questions involved a lot more, well, let's be honest, it made it more profitable. By the grace of God, we did the right thing and slavery is no more. But the lessons of what that bigger issue with the Civil War are is that let's not forget what came out of that, which is government's role, individual liberties, freedom for every single person, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to do and be anything you want to be without anyone or government getting in your way. That should be the goal of what we always try and take away from that, right? Folks, that made no sense. I'm going to read that again for you. All right? Because it made no sense. Nikki Haley is an idiot. She is not a smart person. I'm sorry. I'm a pollster. And again, I will always poll everybody fairly. But I'm giving you the truth here. This is not a smart person. People always wondered why Donald Trump nicknamed her Bird Brain. And they were like, no, that's just a mean nickname. Donald Trump always has a reason for his nicknames. Everyone in his administration viewed Nikki Haley to be an idiot. Not a smart. Thank God she is just the United Nations ambassador. Mm-hmm. All she does is drink coffee and read speeches from a scripted speech.
Scripted, yeah.
Thank God she's not really in charge of dictating any policy. And by the way, even foreign policy, she's totally incoherent. Her thoughts on foreign policy are totally incoherent. I'm going to read this again, just so you understand why he calls her bird brain. Okay. But the lessons of what that bigger issue with the Civil War are is that let's not forget what came out of that, which is government's role, individual liberties, freedom for every single person, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to do and be anything you want to be without anyone or government getting in your way. That should be the goal of what we always try and take away from that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I bet you if I turned to Roman right now and asked him to give me a more coherent sentence, he could give it to me.
That didn't make sense.
It makes no sense.
Absolutely.
No sense whatsoever. It's a hodgepodge. It's a word salad of consultant crap for a Republican primary. That's all it is. It's a word salad trying to throw everything at meat for somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like, let me just give you all the buzzwords for the right-wing idiocy. Let me just throw all that into a word salad and I'll hit somebody with something. That's ridiculous. It's not coherent at all. There is no reference to any historical debate that was involved back then. There's no reference to any of the economic or cultural issues. She just mentions stuff, but she doesn't actually bring any up. It's a word salad meant to make her sound like she's sophisticated when she is in fact an idiot.
If you drink enough wine, it might make sense.
It might make sense if you're drunk, right?
Two bottles.
Because if you are one of the wine and Valium class, maybe that makes sense to you. And we know from, I said this yesterday on Sean's show, but it's true. Like, look at her sweaters. All right. We know what she's trying to do here. You know, those are the ugliest sweaters known to man. All right. But who is she trying to appeal to? Think about it. Because we never want to return back to that place. But we always want to remember the lesson of what it means to be a free individual and that everyone deserves to be a free individual. That's so profound, isn't it? So we stand by that. I say that as a Southerner. I say that that's so insulting to the South. Oh my God. She is such an insulting, condescending moron. I'm sorry, God. Listen, what a condescend. And by the way, because let's be honest, she has forsaken the South because she's trying to win New Hampshire. She doesn't, or even come close, because I've already given people the rundown of what her plan is. And by the way, it's on Real Clear Politics right now, folks. The Nikki Haley plan that I told you about last week is now on Real Clear Politics. It is Nikki Haley's gamble or something like that. It was on there. It basically tells you that she's hoping to come either really close to DeSantis, a strong showing in Iowa, which means coming very close to DeSantis or even beating him because he's collapsing, right? Then, of course, if she can beat Trump in New Hampshire, great. But even if she comes really, really close, they then hope to use fabricated momentum from a primary in Nevada that doesn't dictate delegates, even though conceding that he's going to win the caucus, which does, right? It's a meaningless primary. Only she and Mike Pence are on the ballot. All right. It's ridiculous. Right?
So Riri won in?
Yes. And then use that fabricated momentum to win South Carolina.
Okay.
I kid you not. This is the plan. I kid you not.
You got to trust the plan, Richard.
Trust the plan. Because we never want to return back to that, right? We stand by that, right? I say that as a Southerner. I say that as a Southern governor who removed the Confederate flag off the State House grounds. And I say that as a proud American of how far we've come. There you have it. There you have it. Oof. Now you know why he calls her bird brain. All right. All right. Laura is charging her thing, trying to get up and running here. Yeah. I'm sorry. I was just reading that. What's in her coffee?
Crack
Nikki Haley is the right's Kamala. I mean, these guys got it. I mean, this needs no explanation. This is not a legit take on the Civil War. She also never had a legit take on Eastern Europe. And Jonathan, I mean, the truth is, he said she wasn't really a good governor in South Carolina. What she's hoping is that people are going to think like her economic record was so impressive because the Obama economy was so bad, right? So she actually benefited from certain industries leaving the Midwest and the North, going to the South. That wasn't Nikki Haley. That was the natural progression in the post-recession world. And in fact, I mean, she's not even like a tax cutter. No. She promised she would never do that gas tax, and she did it. So Life of Brian just holy shit, Nikki Haley's stupid. This is a dumb person, Brian. I'm trying to tell you guys. Between name three. Yeah, when Vivek, she didn't know, Laura. Totally blank. And then fear kicked in. Yeah. The stupidity stare was first, and then the fear stare was after, which, oh my God, I'm in trouble. I'm being exposed right now. And then Fox News saved her. No, they didn't. They did. They jumped. Well, not Fox News. Megyn Kelly, and I'm sorry, I associate. And Megyn, I like Megyn a lot. I think she's great. But I personally like Megyn Kelly. But the News Nation 1 or whatever it was with that debate. They should have pushed her on that, and they didn't. And it's just outrageous. Honestly, I just can't believe that. All right. My theory is that they are all on drugs. Multiple references across all platforms, locals, rumbles, and YouTube, equating her basically calling her the right's Kamala Harris. It's a word salad, guys. She's just as good at word salads as Kamala is. That made absolutely no sense. There's also something real quick I forgot to put up. I am gonna put it up, even though this is just 1:30 while we're waiting for Laura. Anyway, she was like the guy in 40-Year-Old Virgin at the bookstore. What do you think was the cause? That's Matt from Texas. Oh, that's a good one, Matt. That's a good one. All right, so listen, just for those of you who are thinking I was always like too harsh on the DeSantis campaign and was too harsh on them just a minute ago or last hour, here is Ryan Tyson being quoted himself. By the way, I have heard of him. If you're a Florida guy or Florida pollster, you know who he is. He did a great job polling for Ron DeSantis in 2018 when everybody had Ron DeSantis down except for us and Robert at the end. Robert K. Haley at Trafalgar, who overstated his support, by the way. But it was just Robert, us, and his personal pollster who had him winning. It was close, but that he would defeat Gillum. And again, I will tell you, as someone who did poll it right, I'll tell you it's because that Republican base wanted to come out and defeat Bill Nelson because they were out there defending their president, and he just benefited from that. They knew that impeachment was coming, and that if Republicans did not hold the Senate, that basically Trump would be in danger of being removed. You know what I mean? Can we kill that? All right, so Ryan Tyson, Mr. DeSantis' longtime pollster and one of his closest advisors, has privately said to multiple people that they are now at the point in the campaign where they need to, quote, make the patient comfortable, unquote, a phrase evoking hospice care. Others have spoken of a coming period of reputation management, both for the governor and themselves, after a slow motion implosion of the relationship between the campaign and an allied super PAC left even his most ardent supporters drained and demoralized. I will say this again. I believe it was, it was. So, before 2018, Tyson told Matt Gaetz, Representative Gaetz, because Gaetz did a lot to help Ron DeSantis get not only the endorsement from Trump, so he could, defeat Adam Putnam for the nomination, but then to get him elected. And Ryan Tyson had told Matt Gaetz, listen, we're going to be down in every single public poll, every single one before this election. And we're going to wind up winning by about, I think he even nailed it, like 30, 40,000 votes. I'm telling you, he said that. So They should have listened more to the Florida guy and a lot less to Jeff Rowe and the pollsters that he uses. Whether they were being used by the DeSantis campaign, public opinion strategies, the rest of them. There were really bad assumptions made looking at the polling data that had been given to them. So bottom line is, make the patient comfortable is certainly, what it means. And I told Gorka months ago on Rob Schmidt Tonight, months ago, that campaign was on life support and it was done. And that they would just grift for the next couple of months, keep that patient comfortable, and drain all the resources that they could drain to put in their own pockets. And sadly, that's what Jeff Rowe did. Reputation management. I'm sorry, there is no reputation management at this point. Your fate as a candidate or a political figure rests in the hands of Donald Trump. If he forsakes you, you're finished forever. I'm sorry. That's your reality.
Well,
That's
was your decision.
That was your decision. That's a decision you made.
He did not make that decision until you made your decision.
That's right.
So you have to lie in the bed that you have made.
That's right. 100%. Let's see. I did say, let's see, a good one. I saw your question. Give me a second. There's one I'm looking for that I think is really, really good, and I want to, but I want to make sure it's right because I know that the titles are the same. They're really close.
So I do have a question for you. Did you get all of Local's questions?
I didn't, honestly. I skimmed here and there. I really did not. Yeah, I really did not.
So listen, Locals, and all those that have asked questions, if you could copy and paste your questions real fast, I'll grab them.
You hear what she's saying? You probably can't because it's short. You can't
answer
scream at this mic like this. It's supposed to be like that. So what I'm trying to tell is, what she's saying is, if you've asked a question and I didn't answer it on Locals, can you please just like repeat yourself? And but let's see. I'm gonna try to just grab and look at what you look at Locals. So just do that before we move on here. What we can absolutely expect from 2024 is a constant attack on Trump and his ability to run for president. That's what we know that's going to happen. At no point in 24, and I think Vivek is right about this, at no point in 24 will they come to the conclusion, all right, lawfare has failed. We can't stop him. There's nothing we can do. We're just going to have to move on and try to beat him at the ballot box. They're not going to do that. Now, they're going to try to beat him at the ballot box if everything fails, but there will be no point where they say to themselves, all right, let's just have a free and fair election. That is not the nature of government or tyranny, and that is what we saw in 23. In 2023, we saw tyranny rear its ugly head. We got a glimpse of what would happen if these people did have full power and control over everything. We are at what 2023 told us is that we are at a point where we're literally one Supreme Court vote away from losing it all. Losing it all. Because once it's gone, we're not getting it back. It's gone.
Not without blood.
Not with it. That's the truth. And she doesn't mean that in some call to violence or something like that. That is the history of man. That is the history of mankind, the humankind, whatever. And that is the history that our founders told us to expect. You don't get it back without bloodshed. And that's sad, but it's true. Have you ever seen a peaceful revolution that led to more freedom? No. All of the vehicles that are peaceful vehicles to change leadership, to change the course of policy, to change the nature of your government, your social contract, will be removed. That's it. And by the way, how many good people, whether you're on the left or you're on the right, because you got to look at people like Bernie Sanders, who came along, and I feel bad for Bernie supporters, because we call him Bend Over Bernie over here for the new people who are watching, because he bends over every time, and he sells his supporters out for a house or this or that. I mean, he just gets bribed to shut up and get on board, and he leaves his supporters high and dry all the time, and it's sad, because his supporters are true believers. And they don't have a champion, which is why, by the way, I think all of his royal coalition from 2016, basically now Trump voters, they are. And you could see the change in the coalition between 16 and 20. He went from being the suburb to rural challenger to Hillary Clinton, who was the suburb, also urban candidate. And he totally flipped. He was only winning urban, white, educated areas, very liberal, uber liberal, and Biden was beating him in the burbs and rural areas. And that's how Biden won. That, and, by the way, rigging the system. I mean, they did. Barack Obama did himself. Had Barack Obama not gotten involved, Bernie Sanders would have been the nominee for the Democratic Party in 2020. And then even when Super Tuesday was up, voters still told us, I like Bernie, I want to vote for Bernie, but the media and Barack Obama convinced us that he can't beat Donald Trump. So I'm going to begrudgingly vote for Joe Biden, even though I don't support Joe Biden. And that happened to Bernie, and that's tragedy. But it's the real tragedy, again, is his supporters. In any event, who like a Bernie or like a Trump or anybody would ever come to the forefront again if they, whoever put themselves forward again? Why would they do that if this effort is successful? Why would you do it? You would not. No one. It will be a chilling effect, and we will get, I've said this several times, but we will get a slate of state-approved candidates that we're allowed to vote for. And it'll be a charade of an election. It'll be a hologram election. Like, I've used the term hologram capitalism before. This would be hologram self-governance, hologram democracy, whatever word you want to use, even though I don't like the word democracy, because this is not a democracy. Or at least it wasn't supposed to be. And unfortunately, the progressive era did a lot to turn us more into a democracy than what we were originally designed to be, which is a republic, a constitutional republic with powers vested in various areas of the government and the body politique. So no one part of society or government had that much power at once. And instead, they sold you a bill of goods about one man, one vote, and a lot of other load of crap. And they vested the power, sadly, where it should not always be. So you could agree with the one man, one vote principle of the progressive era, and that sounds all very well and good. Yay, great, let's vote for our own senators, but you're violating the principle of the division. You're violating enumerating powers. That's what you're doing that, because they're giving you the illusion that they're vesting more power in you, the voter. But the truth is, that's why democracy doesn't work too. Because in our case, I call it rational ignorance in our virtuous republic. It's not that we're stupid. We're just really busy. They are very good at distracting us with life. And we don't have time to study all the issues like a state legislator would study the issues to choose a senator.
But we do. We just choose not to.
Many people choose not to. Like I said earlier today, earlier on the show when you were gone, I said, the truth is, the he's an insurrectionist thing is just a stupid pill for stupid people. They don't believe that, right? But what they do believe is that there are many among them, especially in their ranks, that they think that self-governing is too hard for these people. And in truth, if you give them the easy way out, they want to be governed. They want someone to take that burden from them. And I'm sad to say that they are right. I know that from my research and juror research.
But you want to know what irony
I know they're right about that.
That back then it was a lot harder. That everything consumes more time, like actual personal labor.
But yeah,
and yet here we are with
Yeah.
technology that makes our lives 10 times
easier. It should be easier.
Yes,
That's right, Laura. Totally right. She's totally right. But you know what, Laura? They went to taverns back then, and yeah, they got drunk and had a great time and talked about issues.
Really?
They didn't go to the bar, they didn't go to the tavern, get drunk and talk about their new app on their phone or, right. So some nonsense. Yeah. Did you get did you get vaccinated for the 8th potential time? Ooh, that's a good question. Which is the most bellwether county in the United States? In 2020, we would have been able to answer that for you, and it would have been Juneau County, but now it's not. I will say this, though. Pike and Vigo counties in Indiana, I still look out immediately, Dash, because they will tell you whether or not there will be a significant swing, all right, in the vote share, and they come in really early because it's one of the states that's first to report, all right? So in that area, in that region. So actually, no, overall, too, it is. But still, once upon a time, we'd be able to say that, but Trump won 19 out of the 20 top bellwether counties in the country, and he still so-called lost, And Owen says, between Barris Barnes and Mark Rubert, I generally don't get blindsided by news all year. Good for you, Owen. Again, good for you.
Dan said the same thing.
Yeah, and Dan said that's just great to hear, because that's what we're doing here. And Mark has been doing great work. Him and Eric always do good shows, great stuff. But particularly when it comes to politics, Mark has been really, really ahead of the curve. And I'm telling you, I don't want to, this is not a prediction, but it is a concern for 24. If all else fails, someone's going to take a shot at this guy.
Yes.
I'm sorry to say it, but I'm sorry to say it, but this is what I really do worry about, because if God forbid they're successful, number one, it would be an incredibly great evil. And we would, I don't know, just shame on us. Just shame on us. Like, I would probably pray for supernatural retribution. No, I'm serious. We deserve to be straight smited at that point. And we would, because it's like, as a society, we are not holding our representatives. It's our fault. Like, it's totally our fault. Right. So, yeah. We fear them more than they fear us, and it should be the other way around. But they're already beginning with the rhetoric that they know it acts as a contagion to make one of their lunatic nuts do something stupid, and they never do things like that themselves. And God forbid if they are successful, number one, it would be a great evil, but number two, the reason why I worry about it so much is because that's when all hell is going to break loose. You want to try to take them off a ballot, people will protest, people will flip out. That's one thing. You want to try to throw them in jail, we're getting real freaking hairy here. You try to take a shot at him, I'm telling you, that will be the final straw. And I worry about this stuff a lot, Laura. And that's why that whole closet right there is filled with 4 Patriots kits, filled with it, along with other supplies and stuff, that we need. That's why I have a Glock 48 on the right here, as always. I mean, I worry about this stuff. I do. With kids, you become a father, you really start to worry about it. Next to the water purification tool. I kid you not, folks. And Sean, by the way, was like, I've been prepping for the end since I first watched The Walking Dead on AMC. He said, I've been preparing for the zombie apocalypse. By the way, Sean, I'm totally with you. Melee weapon, Sean. Melee weapon. You cannot have ammunition run out. I'm a huge fan of a machete, and I'm also pretty wicked with an E-tool. And you should be too, 10th Mountain. You should be too. No kidding. I bet you he is wicked with that E-tool. I bet it looks like a shovel, guys, but it is. And it is a shovel, but it's a weapon. Laura got me. I never showed you. Laura got me for one of my birthdays one year, the bomb E-tool. For those of you who are in the Army, you know what I'm talking about. It's a foldable shovel kind of thing, but it's also most definitely a weapon. And during a zombie apocalypse, I'm all for the melee weapon myself. Melee, whatever. So, supporter, what did you think of Haley when she was ambassador? Mixed feelings. I knew that she would do certain things that was certainly underhanded to Donald Trump. He said it in an interview the other day that she was, somewhat disloyal by deciding, because she said, "I will never run against you," when she was resigning and asked for his blessing, which is why she has all this money now. I mean, it's really screwed up if you think about it. She said, "I would never run against you, period, end of story." And she went back on that. But when at her time at the UN, Donald Trump had laid out his foreign policy doctrine, which was principled. He called it principled realism. And for instance, with Iran, that meant things like maximum pressure campaign, beyond sanctions, like, with which have loopholes, by the way, all in. So it never really hurts anyone but the people of the country. The government and the ruling class always can skate through the loopholes. The people can. There were times when she just simply carried out his agenda, when I know she could have tried to stab him in the back. So, for that, I thought she was at least admirable in her role. But then she'd get up and cause these, like, when the UN ambassador gets up and says something that contradicts the president's foreign policy doctrine, you give mixed signals. And that I criticized her for. But for the most part, her execution of the actual job and conveying messages privately, diplomatically, did convey his wishes more often than not. So that is a lot different than Secretary of Defense, for instance, Mad Dog Mattis. He would do things that were undermining Trump constantly. Tom Tillis is the first Secretary of State, constantly undermining him. Second Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. I mean, this is a man who tried to use his authority to kill Julian Assange when he was the head of the CIA. That is not sanctioned by Donald Trump. And I'll never forget it was April 2018, meeting in the Situation Room, where Trump comes in and he's pissed, man. He's looking over at McMaster. He's looking at Mattis, and he's like, "I told you all I do not want anyone in Syria anymore. You're doing that." They're doing it behind his back. Behind his back. He told them, "We're done with this operation." And they ignored him. Right. By the way, Joe Kent's wife was killed because she should have been home. Joe Kent's wife, his late wife, he is remarried now, his late wife should have been home because that operation should have been terminated. Anyway, Trump finds out about it. He flips, right? And then he tells them, he bitched them. He bitched them. They think they're so tough always, like when they leak to the media, but he totally put them in their place. And he said, and by the way, this is done, and it's done as of like yesterday. And they did finally listen after that last thrashing. But then he said, "I want a plan to get out of Afghanistan." And that's next on your list. I am deadly serious. These wars are coming to an end. I need a responsible exit plan from Afghanistan. And that's what you should have been doing instead of conducting this operation behind my back. So she didn't do things like that to him. By the way, what did Mad Dog Mattis and Henry McMaster do immediately after that meeting? They ran to CNN and told CNN that he's mad, right? He's nuts. He's going to cause the world to spiral into chaos. That's what they did. Unbelievable. She didn't do anything like that. She didn't. However, their jobs were far more, I would say I wouldn't say, they are much more difficult jobs than a UN ambassador. Folks, that does not give you foreign policy experience. A UN ambassador is an easy job. You can sit and do it while drinking your cup of coffee like this. Rick Grinnell is right. It's a 5-minute coffee break. It's not exactly rigorous, incredibly difficult, requires a ton of talent. It doesn't. Sorry, but that's true. Jurrier, I watched every single episode this year, and I genuinely can't think of a single thing you got wrong in 2023. Your worst poll and prediction was PA in 22. Yes, true. Different year. Which is incredible given you've gotten pretty much everything else right since 2016. Cheers and Happy New Year. Thank you, Jurrier. But yeah, since 2016, we got Arizona wrong in 2018. McSally, the polling, we didn't have her head in the poll, but the model we did, because the fundamentals model suggested that she was going to outperform the polls by a couple of points. Like that had happened. And the voter registration trends weren't enough. They were pro-Democrat, but not enough to shift the prediction as much. And by the way, look at how she lost. I mean, she barely lost. So I'm not that upset with Arizona in 18, but PA in 22, I am. And here's the deal. The formula for victory for Oz, much like Caroline Corluccio, it was there. The public opinion was there. What wasn't was the vote. Get out the vote. Excuse me. Oz should have won that election. He didn't, because Republicans, especially in a state like Pennsylvania, will not pull their heads out of their butt. And they refuse to understand that your turnouts are never going to look the same as they did in the past. You need to get the low propensity voter who doesn't vote for Donald Trump, who doesn't vote for anyone but Donald Trump, out when you are not there. And honestly, I did tell several people that I do know, in and around Trump, that 22 was going to be different than 18. He was a sitting president, but you are going to need to do what you did in 18 if you want to save some of these governorships and Senate seats, and they didn't do it. I mean, he just didn't. And I know he had a lot on his plate with lawfare and gearing up and all of that. But what I'm talking about is Donald Trump essentially ran for Senate in 18. That's why they netted 2 more seats. It was him. He ran around and did it all, man. He campaigned for everybody. Everybody. And he didn't do that in 22. He endorsed them, but he didn't do it. But 23, thank you for saying that, because I really don't know anything in 23 we got wrong, including anything we may have done with specials or anything. I just don't know. Addendum question on the Montana Senate race. Will Matt get in? As far as I know, he's already kind of doing it. You got Shealy, who's a McConnell, who he's endorsed Trump now. Oh, very good. He's a McConnell shell. He's not going to be even a Steve Daines like senator from Montana. You are going to get a John Thune with that guy. I'm sorry, but it's true. Rosendale screwed up on a lot of things, but he does represent Montana views better than Healy, however you say his name. He does, but he's done some stupid crap in the past, man. And he's ran some bad races in the past. He almost beat John Tester last time. And by the way, that's the thing. John Tester is going to be incredibly difficult to beat. People think that it's a Montana, it's a red state. Republicans are going to flip it. With Trump on the ballot, it certainly makes it more likely. But Tester is tough, man. He's tough. And Republicans, their bench in Montana sucks. Sucks.
Tell me how you really feel.
Sucks. It's pathetic. You have all these years to find somebody to go against Tester. You lose in 18. So you don't take 6 years to decide what we did wrong against Tester in 18. That's all right. He's been hitting that thing. It's okay. With congressional reps running way behind Trump, is there any evidence that populist candidates can overcome this? Well, is there any direct evidence? I don't think anyone's really started to poll the difference in congressional races. I'll tell you what, John O'Shea is going to perform better in Texas 12 than any of the rhinos that are going to try to run against him, especially one specific, Dade Phelan, acolyte, sycophant, whatever you want to call him. And then, there are areas like Bruce would have done better in Maine 2nd Congressional District with Trump on the ballot. The problem Republicans are having right now is an identity crisis. So if there were more populist candidates on the ballot, then I do think they would do better. And then you have like what's going on with David Giglio out in California right now. They went to a district judge. It's why they were so confident. Vince Fong was so confident that he gave up his own seat. The law is very clear. You cannot run for 2 offices at once. And the deadline for him to remove from his own district had passed.
So he basically was barred from running for the nomination in California 20 to replace Kevin McCarthy, where David is running. Why would you throw all of these people against David if you weren't total frauds trying to stop America first? Vince Fong is not America first. Let me say this right now. Vince Fong, like everybody else in the California GOP that we exposed last year when they tried to take all of those delegates from Donald Trump during the rewriting of the primary rules, which they were defeated only because we made such a stink. All right. If it wasn't for David Giglio, and this is why Donald Trump should at least meet with the guy, and decide whether to endorse him. Understand this. The former president should understand this right now. If it wasn't for David Giglio, you wouldn't be set to sweep all of California's delegates. Your team would have screwed you out of 50, 55 delegates at least. And Jessica Patterson would have laughed behind your back. Vince Fong is a never Trumper. Ask Rick Garnell, your buddy in California. Vince Fong hates Donald Trump. Just like we told you that John Duarte hates Donald Trump. Now we have to what? Wait a year and a half for all of his advisors who can't stand him because he's a bum to leave and talk to every reporter that will listen to them under the sun that he is a never Trumper. He lied. He's a liar. Telling you they are having this problem running behind Trump because they're in this identity crisis. The Republican Party is not that much different from the Democratic Party. I'm sorry. They are not saying anything about election. It's not election interference, by the way. It's election cancellation, what they're doing to Donald Trump. They are not trying to interfere with elections. They're trying to terminate them. And what they're doing in California is a great example of why they're not really fighting. They want to do it themselves. They want to run to, they're not going to condemn an activist judge in no uncertain terms because they need to run to one right now to get Vince Fong on the ballot. Everyone knows the law is black and white. Political observers in California that know the law on the left and on the right have been, basically in agreement, or at least I would say non-interested parties have been in agreement. The law is crystal clear. Vince Fong passed the deadline. He is not eligible to run. But they need to stop David Giglio, and Shannon Grove wouldn't get in the race. So they asked for an activist judge to break the law, or better yet, to allow Vince Fong to break the law. Vince Fong will be a never Trumper. He'll be a David Valadao, and he'll be another John Duarte, David Valadao in a 20-point plus red district. So I'm telling you, again, Trump is certainly doing much better when it comes to divining who is good and who is bad, but he still has people telling him a lot of BS, and he needs to make moves. Otherwise, even if he wins, he's going to end up with an adversarial Congress, and he will not get anything done. In 2016, they won across the board. And everyone thought, well, they'll get this done, they'll get that done, at least because they were still not totally unmasked as frauds that they are, even though Rush Limbaugh had been telling people, these are not Republicans like you are a Republican or like Rush is a Republican. They're fakes. If you can't beat them, join them, right? That's what Republicans are.
No.
That's who they really are. You think Jessica Patterson wanted in Anaheim to kiss Donald Trump's backside while she introduced him to the crowd for that speech? She hates him. She had no damn choice. But behind his back, she'll do everything in her power to screw him, like she tried to do with the delegates. And again, if it wasn't for David and Laura Loomer, who reported and got the ball rolling, and then, not for nothing, but I picked up the phone when I got the call and said, what is going on? Because they were being lied to by their own people. So you let Vince Fong in there and he becomes an impeachment vote to remove you from office before you even finish your second term. That's on you. I'm sorry, but it's true. There is nobody running for Kevin McCarthy's seat that will support Trump's agenda and the America First movement other than David Giglio. That's it. The rest of them are McCarthy scumbags. They will vote like McCarthy. They will act like McCarthy. They will dirty up the chamber like McCarthy dirtied it up. They will fail like McCarthy. Worst of all. So you got to listen. Again, the whole hour was about how the 2023 was the year of the banana republic. Do you really think America has time to elect frauds like Vince Fong? You're out of time. You're out of time. Your children are out of time. Your grandchildren are out of time. You're one Supreme Court vote away from being completely subjugated. Vince Fong. What a friggin' joke. And by the way, I'm not affiliated with David's campaign at all. So I'm just telling you the God's honest truth. And I told you the truth about Duarte even when I was affiliated with the guy. Not because I was affiliated with him, but because it was the truth. Now look at Duarte. Now look at him. A total fraud out for himself with the FBI holding something over his head. Who won by 400 votes and is about to lose anyway to Adam Gray because it's not going to be 50% turnout in 2024. And he's done nothing to win the Trump Hispanics over. Nothing. Tell Rich to listen to Rakita's stream last night. He should be careful what he says about weapons just in case. Yeah, it's true. It's true. I know what you're saying. I know what you mean. Woke farts bestow Pulitzers on each other. Now it's even in science. Dumb kids of elites monopolize institutional power. I think I know what you're saying. I know how it comes across, but I do know what you're saying. Who do you think Trump's VP pick would be? Do you think Texas is going blue anytime soon? You know, I don't think that demographic changes simply because they're demographic changes mean the state's going blue anytime soon. I don't. At the presidential level, if they go another way, if they went, by the way, like Nikki Haley could lose the state of Texas. I'm not kidding. Even Ron DeSantis probably would win it, but he'd barely win it. There is a danger that Texas is going blue. And again, this goes back to the identity crisis. You need those Hispanics to vote for you that vote for Trump because the Anglo vote is just not Republican by the margin it used to be. And it has nothing to do with it being a MAGA candidate or it being a traditionally conservative candidate. Ted Cruz didn't do well either. Or it's, you know, if you had a moderate like John Cornyn, they're going to run into the same issues. Who would Trump's VP pick? I don't know yet. You got to lower your voice just a little bit, buddy. That's a little too much. That's a little too much. I mean, I know who really is in consideration, although I think you guys need to understand that he really is. I mean, any candidate right now is more concerned about winning the actual nomination. It doesn't mean I'm sure he doesn't think about it. I mean, he's answered this question himself, and I would honestly defer to him on that. But the names that I have heard batted around by people I know, or at least have some knowledge, Nikki Haley's not on them. It is Kristi Noem is definitely on that list, as far as I understand. I'm just saying. So is Dr. Ben Carson. I'm trying to think of a couple other ones that were on that list. I'm trying to think. We just had this conversation like a week ago too, or when the Haley stuff was going on. We had it, but it wasn't a conversation about. It was more like a chuckle and a laugh because the Haley thing was being pushed by like DeSantis's people in one last effort to try to, stop Trump voters from supporting him. And I love Mike, but he was just dead ass wrong. Donald Trump is not considering Nikki Haley. I'm sorry. Now, he is considering winning the New Hampshire primary. He is considering winning the South Carolina primary, but he is not going to nominate a woman, who ran against him when he was being persecuted, and B, who vowed that she would never run against him and then went back on her word. Like, Trump really does care about loyalty a lot. Anyone who knows him will tell you that first. I mean, I don't know the guy personally, but people who do, they always talk about how much he respects loyalty. And, that's what and she lacks both. She has demonstrated she lacks both. I just don't see it, and I don't believe it. And people who I know, again, who are close to the campaign, just laugh at it. They just chuckle at it. It's not happening. It's just not. What else? What else? Yeah, the SWAT. I'm telling you, the swatting thing has to be enacted. Republicans should be doing a lot less of what they're doing because they're pathetic, and a lot more of like actual combating issues we have in Republican state controlled legislatures and governor mansions. There should be swatting bills in every single one of them right now. Swatting Rick Scott. Thank God he was at the dinner with his wife. How is it not an act of terrorism to swat a U.S. senator? Your attempt, and by the way, even conservative commentators and their parents, Jack's mother, you are attempting to use violence, because it is. Everyone knows people have died from swatting. We know that has happened. So you can only assume, knowing that to be the case, that the object or the objective of that person making that swat happen is for that person, the target, to be hurt or killed. That is, and why? Because for political change, for political reasons, right? To change some political discourse or policy or something. So that is literally the definition of terrorism, political terrorism. So those bills should be done and signed on the desk and signed of every Republican governor mansion in the country. I mean, this is just nuts. Someone's going to get killed. It's sad, but it's true. And for people who don't know what I'm talking about, the police have no choice. They have an obligation. They have to respond. So it's like, it's attempted murder. Thank you. It could be both attempted murder and what is it? Conspiracy to commit an act of terror or something like that. Right. There is no doubt that what they're doing, and for people who don't know. So phone call, for instance, if they swatted me, they would say, hi, my name is Rich Barris. I'm the People's Pundit, and I lived at this address, whatever. I just shot my wife, and I'm going to take the life of my children before committing suicide. Right? So then they barge in my house to try to save my kids and myself. So to do that to a sitting senator, even again, a personality, a media personality or political figure or something like that, a public figure, that's attempted murder. Absolutely. NL, and should actually, when anyone's connected to politics at all, should be terrorism.
Disclaimer, Rich loves me dearly and his children.
Oh, yes.
And he does not have suicide.
I am not suicidal. I would never hurt my family. So let me just make that a disclaimer right now in case I end up one day in a bag. All right. I never thought I would have a podcast that I would make a point listening. Thank you so much. Kudos to you. I never thought I would have a podcast that I would make an appointment listening. Love the show. Thank you so much for that. That's why I do it. That means a lot. It does. Tell me about Texas. Will Texas leave the union? Listen, I think that people have mocked people like Tim Pool and others who have talked about, I don't know if civil war is the term, but certainly a separation. And if this continues and there's no political, peaceful remedy to the problems that are plaguing this country, I think it's not only possible, it's likely it's going to happen. You can't have a nation like this. You can. And there's only one way that if the state and the status quo prevails, there's only one way they can preserve the union. I hate to tell everybody this. You get rid of the opposition. You understand what I'm saying? You get rid of them through like any other means. I'll just point you to an author, R.J. Rummel. He is the father of the term democide. All right. And I think you should look that up because that's the only way. Otherwise, that opposition is going to leave. There will be a split. It will happen. Tim is not hyperbolic. He's obviously a good student of history. There's only two ways this ends up that way if the state prevails and there's no peaceful remedy to leave. Either the state uses police power to exterminate the opposition, by horrible acts from imprisonment to annihilation, genocide. I mean, this is what governments do, folks. I mean, we have proven in the year 2023 that we are not any better. It turns out if we're better, it ain't by much. And then the second way is if that opposition population simply leaves and splits. And that's the only way it goes. Many believe McSally was robbed in 2018. Razor Fist called Arizona 2018 the dry run for 2020. There was an enormous report conducted by a law firm that is a serious law firm. They're not some political, that was done on the behest of the outgoing Republican Party chairman, and it absolutely showed that mail-in ballots were there was many problems. And I'm not saying that that's not a possibility. I do believe it absolutely is a possibility. Are we doing a New Year's Eve book club? I know, Ian, Elon, I don't think we are. I don't think enough people would show. And we talked about that in the beginning of the last one. I just don't think enough people would show up for it. I think the tester commercials are falling a bit flat here, though. They seem to be forced. They seem forced. Yeah, I guess you're in Maine, Montana, Norm. Probably. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have much he can run on at this point. He can just say, "Look, I'm John. You know me. I'm not one of them." And again, it'd be tough, but he knows the guy. He's got a lot of friends. I mean, when you're sitting in that seat for a while, you make a lot of friends. They turn out a lot of votes. What do I think about Mike Pompeo joining the American Civil Liberty or the ACLJ team this year? That's what's his name's group. His name is the founder is escaping me right now, but I don't want to dog anybody's work or anything, but it's like the same thing I think about Bill Barr joining that election integrity group. I think that it says a lot about the organization to let somebody like that in there. It says a lot more about the organization than it does insinuate at all that person has improved themselves, right? I lost all my firearms in a tragic fishing accident.
Me too.
That's funny. Yeah, we heard about that. Vince Vaughn, Texas. I thought he was saying Vince Vaughn. Listen, I tried to get Vince Vaughn to run for the governor in Minnesota one year. I did. I know someone who knows him. I tried to reach out to him. I got the word he wasn't interested. I absolutely love Vince Vaughn. I think the world of him. I think that the Republican Party would do a lot better to have people like Vince Vaughn as the face of their party. I do. And every time the guy opens his mouth and says something political, I'm like, damn, I agree with 100% of everything he just said. And it's not Republican by nature, but that's exactly the point. Maybe it is. Maybe after Ronald Reagan, a bunch of crooked scumbags took control of the Republican Party and now have completely muddied the waters as to what a Republican even is or believes. And we have seen some challenges to that here and there, but for the most part, they have been able to preserve that image, and that image is dangerous electorally. That image is unpopular electorally, and the image is incorrect. As far as the reflection of the voters, they asked, it's incorrect as far as a reflection of the voters. Sadly, it's still correct as a reflection of the people who are in office. And that's the sad part. And people always say, well, that's the voters' fault. And that is true. It is. It's totally 100% the voters' fault, except they're never told the truth. That's what rational ignorance is, by the way. Like John Duarte had millions of dollars to lie to old people in California's 13th district and claim that he was a Trumper who was a fighter and would fight to secure the border. He's a freaking liar, but he's a liar with a lot of money. And those monies tell a lot of lies. And when and people don't have the time to really, iron out what's what. Why doesn't Scott Walker run for that? Derek Ann, one way ahead of me, Derek. I had so many people saying, Rich, don't stop saying Ron Johnson would be a good VP pick because, we got nobody to run for that seat in 24. And I, the whole time thinking to myself, I'll get Scott Walker to run for that seat. I will have Don call Scott and we will make that happen. Yeah, absolutely. Even though he allowed George Will to destroy his campaign, I still think that when he left before he completely embarrassed himself or destroyed his credibility. I also think that he is, man, I'll just tell you, if you ever met the guy, he's so legit. He just is. I think Trump concerned him. I think that, he's part of that kind of world, but I don't think he's he's not like a Paul Ryan kind of guy. I don't, yes, he's friends with Ryan, and yes, they came up through that same ranks. I just don't think he is. We would not expect from a Senator Walker what we would see from a Senator Ryan. I don't believe that. And Jonathan says that I'm the only podcast, Rich, you're the only podcast marked on my personal calendar 3 times a week. Love you, buddy. You're Rush reincarnated. Oh, man. Dude, thank you so much. We love you too, Jonathan. Thank you so much for your viewership and your support. It's been a rough year. We had a lot of trash talkers. So we really love and appreciate you guys. And I told you the truth, by the way. They did not. If we lose Trump and MAGA, then USA becomes totalitarian, and then all the rest of the Western world also. IDKs. I don't know. EAYS. Yeah. I'll tell you what. Whether you and that's the last question. It's already 12:17. Whether you agree or disagree, or not, I wouldn't say that. Whether you support or oppose Donald Trump, you cannot disagree with that statement if you're being intellectually honest. You just can't. And there are so many people out there. That's why he's doing so well in the polls. There are so many people out there who did not support Donald Trump, but now understand that you cannot let the state do this and then expect to remain free. You can't do that. They're not ever going to simply stop with Donald Trump. And by the way, we have seen the Democrats in Colorado remove people from ballots before. It never gained any traction. They will never stop with Donald Trump. They will never stop rigging elections once Donald Trump is gone. They will never stop with the persecutions once Donald Trump is gone. It's open season once Donald Trump is gone. Open season.
He is in the way.
That's one of the most true things that he ever said. That Lori's right. That's one of the most one of the most true things Donald Trump has ever said is that they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in the way. And I'm telling you, he's correct. And that goes to what I was saying about, national divorce or a split. That if this doesn't iron out, folks, then that is inevitable. And there's only 2 ways that you avoid it. With him out of the way, which way do you think it's going to go? You think they're just going to let you go? You think they're just going to let you vote?
Your illusion will disappear quickly.
They're going to come at you. Oh, we vote to leave. No, you don't. You just voted yourself into annihilation.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So
Can you just
there it is.
Answer a recommendation first of all.
Yeah. You know what? Who is that? Can we contact them afterwards? Because I was just clicking and my screen was glitching when I was trying to go through it, and I don't want to. I almost froze the stream looking for a book. All right. So is it on YouTube? Listen, I'm going to grab it, Reg, and I'm going to put it into the community notes on YouTube. All right. Because I can't remember exactly which one it is. I have one that's really good, but there's another one that I couldn't. And I know the titles are always so darn similar. So, hi, gorgeous. I knew beauty lit up this room somehow. My daughter came in, and I just knew somehow greatness was around me.
Hi, gorgeous. The prettiest girl in the whole wide world. So yeah, I will get it and I'll put it in the stream because I don't want to give you guys the wrong title until I grab that author again. All right, but I will. All right, gonna get it, read it, and gift it to sons. Oh, and it's a great idea. All right, so I will do that and I'll get back to you on it. With that in mind, I think we're gonna kick rocks here, right? And I will see you guys. I'll see locals. I'll see you soon. Everybody else, I like Elon said, I don't think we're gonna have a New Year's Eve book club. If people aren't gonna show and we're in for New Year's. I'm telling you, Laura and I aren't gonna be out there partying hardy, and tell you, we're not doing that. Yeah, we're too old. We're gonna take it easy with our kids, hang tight, watch a movie, maybe It's a Wonderful Life or something.
And then run outside and bang pots at midnight.
We'll be stupid and bang pots and probably set off some fireworks or something. But that's about it. And wishing everybody a wonderful, happy, but of course safe New Year. Enjoy it, but be safe.
Make
All right.
smart decisions.
Make smart decisions, people. All right. And we'll see you in the new year with the brand new episode 434. We'll kick off 2024. 434 is going to kick off 2024. And we'll also decide whether or not we're going to, because we are so close. Here's the countdown right here. We are so close to the Iowa caucuses. If we're going to do a final Iowa caucus poll, we're going to have to do it pretty soon, because days will go by. We'll be 2 weeks out by the time the new year is done.
Did you get that?
And then it'll take us for Iowa.
Yeah.
It'll take us about, 2-3 days to collect. I try to give myself in for Iowa, a 4-day field. We normally don't need that, but you could. Let's bank on 3. So then that automatically brings us down to 11 days before the Iowa caucus, then a day to process, right? That's 10 days before the Iowa caucus. And then, we have to go over all the stuff that we always go over, which is, I can't change my mind. I won't be persuaded. What's the general election look like? Which, by the way, I never released the general election for Iowa. I didn't notice that until the Epoch Times. Yeah. Until the Epoch Times article came out, I realized that I never did put that out for the public. And it's out there. It's there. Ooh, real quick before, will it be open or available to me already, or do I have to sign in again? The hidden voting block that may decide the election, could swing the election. And that is the title of the Epoch Times article, or I'm going to put it in the thing. Let's share it for people. Hold on. Let me stop the screen share. Let me bring it up so you know when you have it and it's right. If you guys read the Epoch Times, it's in there. It is a great article. It quotes me, Sean Trendy, and somebody from the University of something in Pennsylvania. So some academics. Here it is. I'll put it in the thing. Laura will as well. Locals, I think I shared it with you guys last night, but here it is just in case. For people on Getter, I would have shared this with you. I've been meaning to tell you. I don't know what's going on, but the last Getter update from a desktop, I'm having a very difficult time being able to post anything other than a live video. I have to figure out what's going on. I don't know what's going on, but I can do it from my app. But I don't post as much from my apps as I do from my Mac and, my whether it's a laptop or a desktop. All right. So this is a kind of long article, but man, it's awesome. She goes out and even interviews Trump or bust voters. They're perfect examples of the polling, which she dug very deep into our maps on the Rust Belt poll and pulled some of those Trump or bust voters out. Very, very good article. And, interesting enough, even the left-wing academics and the left-wing Democratic strategists that she speaks with too. Yeah. And by the way, she asked them to take our polling and review it. And they were like, yup, he's right. They come out, we're in trouble. But they did say, they're Democrats. They have to try to spin some positivity. They're like, I just want to say, though, I think Joe Biden is going to largely recover with these certain groups, and by election day, we got a year. We still got a year. And that's true. They do have a year, but they know as well as I do that is really bad. The one academic was like, yeah, you want to see the real problem?
the urban areas, the Allegheny areas, the Philadelphia areas. And I'm not alone. So while he said it was shocking, the numbers were shocking, the New York Times and others, everyone else is finding things like this. So I'm not alone in seeing that Trump is already at his target in Allegheny. I'm not alone in seeing he's exceeding his target in Philadelphia. They see it. It's really interesting. And it does come from these voters. So, and some of them obviously are in rural areas too. So check it out. All right, I'm out.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Be safe, guys. None but love for you. And deuces. Deuces. You want to say deuces, Roman? Yeah! I'm hungry. Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Neil. Thank you to everybody. We love you.